Before she was blamed, before she was misunderstood, before history reduced her to a single mistake, she was called very good. Eve is not just the woman who took the fruit. She is the first woman, the first partner, the first mother. And her story is far deeper than one moment in a garden. Created with intention. Genesis tells us something profound. After creating Adam, God said, "It is not good for the men to be alone." Genesis 2 verse 18. For the first time in creation, something was not good. So God does something intimate. He causes Adam to sleep, and from his side he forms a woman. Not from his head to rule over him. Not from his feet to be beneath him. But from his side, equal in dignity, designed for partnership. When Adam sees her, he does not respond with analysis. He responds with poetry. "This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Eve enters the story not as an afterthought, but as the completion of something incomplete. Together, man and woman reflect the fullness of God's image. Together, they are entrusted with the care of creation. She is called woman at first, and later Eve, meaning mother of all living. Before sin ever touched the world, Eve walked in harmony. No shame. No fear. No insecurity. She lived in direct relationship with her Creator. This is where her story truly begins. The conversation that changed everything. Then the serpent speaks. Notice how temptation unfolds. It begins with a question: did God really say? The attack is subtle. It plants doubt about God's goodness and God's clarity. Eve sees that the fruit looks good, desirable, appealing. The temptation is not random. It promises wisdom. It suggests independence. It implies that God is holding something back. And in that moment, Eve faces the same tension every human faces: trust God's voice or trust her own reasoning. She chooses the fruit. Adam, who stands with her, chooses it too. And instantly, everything changes. Their eyes are opened. But not to freedom. To shame. They sew fig leaves together. They hide. The woman who once walked confidently now hides among trees. When confronted, blame enters the story. Pain enters the story. The ground is cursed. Childbirth will now carry sorrow. Relationships will carry tension. Eve becomes central not only to the entrance of sin, but to the reality of its consequences. Yet even here, something remarkable happens. God speaks judgment, but he also speaks promise. In Genesis 3 verse 15, he declares that one day, the offspring of the woman will crush the serpent's head. Hope is woven into the fallout. Eve is not only connected to the fall. She is connected to the promise of redemption. More than a mistake. Too often, Eve's story is reduced to a single act. But Genesis continues. After the expulsion from the garden, she gives birth to Cain, then Abel. Later, to Seth. Life continues through her. Humanity multiplies through her. She knows the pain of loss when Cain kills Abel. She experiences grief, regret, and endurance. She carries both the sorrow of the fall and the strength to move forward. Her name, Eve, means life. Even after sin, even after exile, she becomes the mother of all living. Her story reminds us that failure is not the end of purpose. What Eve means for us. Eve represents something deeply human. She reflects curiosity, desire, the longing for wisdom, the vulnerability to doubt, the ache of consequences. Her story explains why we sometimes believe that independence will bring freedom, only to discover it brings weight. But she also represents resilience. Even outside the garden, life continues. Even after shame, God still speaks. Even after consequences, God still promises. Eve's life tells us that temptation often disguises itself as opportunity. That trust is fragile. That choices ripple farther than we imagine. Yet it also tells us that God's mercy runs deeper than our failure. Closing reflection. Eve begins in a garden of perfection. She walks through deception. She lives in consequence. But she also lives in hope. Her story reminds us that being human means holding both dignity and weakness at the same time. She was not created to fail. She was created to reflect God. And though she fell, she was not abandoned. The first woman shows us something powerful. Even when we choose wrongly, God does not erase us from the story. He continues writing. And maybe that is the deepest truth of all. The story that began with a woman in a garden does not end in shame. It moves toward redemption. And if God could bring life through Eve, even after the fall, He can bring hope through us, even now.